good day, everyone. Hi, my name remains Ayo Jackson, and I am so pumped up this morning that I have with me here Tamara Young. It's such an honor to have you here today, Tamara. I'm so grateful that you decided to come have this discussion with me today, and I think it's a very important one. Tradition is for me to introduce you, but before I get into that, I would like to do the acknowledgement of country, if you don't mind.
Mm-hmm. That sounds good to
Okay.
me.
So today we are having this discussion, this meeting. I acknowledge that we are meeting on the Kana land. I pay my respects to elders of the land, past, present, and emerging. Thank you so much for being here, Tamara.
Beautiful. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation. It's really important. And when you reached out for help, I was like, of course, I'll be there for this.
Yeah, you didn't hold back at all. Thank you so much. So, yes, if you don't mind, can you please do us the honors to introduce yourself?
Sure. So I am an Aboriginal woman and also Irish heritage. So my Aboriginal lineage is through my mother's side. I'm Gamilaroi and Biggambull from northern New South Wales and bottom of Queensland. In terms of where I live and work on Kaurna country like yourself. And I've been here for more than half of my life, so I'm very connected to community here. But in terms of who I am and my identity, it is connected to New South Wales and Queensland. I do also have dogs. I've lived and worked here for more than half of my life. I really do love Kaurna country, and the people that live here have such big hearts and are so welcoming and loving to anyone and everyone who is respectful towards them. And so, yes, it's a real honour to be here with you today.
Absolutely good to know that you have such a great and rich heritage. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I also know that you're the founder of the One Key Lives Counseling. And when I reached out to you, I knew that you were the right person to speak to on this matter because, like I said, actually, I'm making this podcast on behalf of the World Changer Parenting Institute I founded. This is to support multicultural parents living in Australia and across the world, whoever is really interested in reaching and elevating their parenting journey. And I believe that it's all about the learning experiences that we all share. I'm just so excited that you're able to discuss with me on this sensitive matter because, like I shared with you, when I first came into Australia as a new migrant, I was initially under the impression that I should stay away from Indigenous people because that was the narrative I was given. And nobody was giving an explanation for anything in particular. I had my reservations, but it's not like I actually had any intimate interaction with any Indigenous person before I began my coursework in which really exposed me to a lot of truths, a lot of things that are, probably not so spoken about out there.
Yes.
And for a new migrant, it's usually all about the information you get and you're just trying to learn the system. There's so much going on for you personally. Coming to understand the history of the Indigenous people, having a different perspective, I feel like this is not the kind of information that only students or a particular group of people who are very much interested in knowing should to hear about. But I felt like my platform would also be a good place for us to have this conversation as there are audience out there that might really need to hear this. So thank you. I wanted us to start off by, talking about how, there's an history for every person, for no matter where you're from, we'll have a history. I don't know if you would like to start off.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a good place to start off.
Yeah.
This subject.
It is, because when I normally talk to people, as you know, you've met me now, twice now. So I like to start with the things that make us the same. And yes, we all have a story to tell. And in terms of a story, it only ends on the day we take our last breath. And even then, if we have children, if we have families, our stories will continue through them, either through memory or through our bodies remembering. There's a thing called epigenetics, which is just a fancy big word for bodies remembering stories and our cells in our bodies recalling stories about what to be scared of, what to love, what to connect to. So I think the power of story is something I always really talk to, and the power of connecting through stories and shared experiences is the thing that can create a unity within us as a collective on planet Earth. And in terms of my story, it's very, very long and convoluted, so I'm not going to waste anyone's time with that. But for the business part of my story, Wonky Lines Counselling was born from my disenchantment, my sadness, working within systems that didn't nurture or love people or focus on connecting people. So I know narrative therapy. I'm a narrative therapist. I forgot about that. I always forget about listing off all my criteria. I don't really care so much for those things. So yeah, it was created from one of the darkest places in my life because I knew it was the thing I wanted the most, which was connection, love, understanding. And then to start the business, I actually sold my ute. I went to cash converters. So for anyone listening all over the world who doesn't know what that is, it's basically just a pawn shop where you take things in, you sell them, and you might buy other things that people have taken in so you can get extra cash. So I actually didn't have a computer for 6 months in my business. I went and got a cheap tablet and I used that as a computer until I had enough money to really buy one and go forward from there. So it's been 4 years in business now. Obviously, people need love and connection, so I think I'm never going to run out of work in this space. But yes, I hope to have less work in the future.
Oh, thank you so much for sharing that with us. Indeed, it resonates with whoever is hearing that we all have shared experiences, whether it's with regards to how we are being treated by the people close to us or people that are not so connected to us. So, thing that I believe is the effects of colonization on the indigenous communities. And I feel like it's important for new migrants to understand history and how it is connected to colonization because it would enhance their integration into, the Australian society. What are your thoughts on that?
Absolutely. And I think the best part about colonization is that almost all of the world has experienced this. So this is a shared story for so many different countries and people across the world. The tactics, I like to talk about tactics that colonization uses. So the tactics that it uses when it comes to a country like Australia is things like disconnection. So picking people up from where they belong and putting them in places where they do not. There's also power is a big part of it. So removing power from people and creating a false distribution or a false structure of power. So you'll see that a lot in, organizational trauma, where they're giving people leadership roles, but they're not qualified, but they're identified positions. So say, here, Aboriginal person, come and work in this position. We know you're not qualified, but we have this job for you. And so then they do the job and then they might fail, they might make a mistake, and then they're punished for that. So colonization uses a whole bunch of different tactics, and it depends on where we are in the timeline, so in history, in the story, as to what that looks like. So right now it's more organizational trauma, community disconnection, those sorts of things. And then in the past, it was more like assimilation or genocide is actually the true story of what happened in Australia. So yeah, it depends on where we're at in the story as to what colonization is doing and how it's behaving. And I think for anyone coming to Australia, it's like if you go anywhere in the world, right? If I went to China, I would have to learn something about where I am. So
Yes.
what country am I in? What's the
Yes.
history of the country? Is there any political information that I need to know so that I can, number one, so I can keep myself safe, but also so I don't unintentionally cause harm to others. So I would need to know, who is the leader? Who are the people? What are the history? How did their history impact them as a people? And then what are the triggers that I might step on by accident and then cause unintentional harm? So those are the things that I'd be thinking of. And that's what I'd probably hope that, when people come to Australia, they're thinking of these sorts of things as well.
Absolutely spot on that. I feel like, exploring the world, migrating and changing locations has a profound impact on how people begin to see the world, what they're exposed to, especially when they seek for information regarding where they are and where they are
Hmm.
going or where they're coming from. And it's so crucial that in this generation and time, we're able to make that connection to all the knowledge that we need on our journey. So I really think you're spot on that. I speak about this topic passionately because I've been to a podcast or reading a book. There are so many resources around Australia in the libraries, that you can glean wisdom and knowledge from how the indigenous people of Australia, what has happened to them, where are they on the timeline of history. So when we talk about resources, seeking knowledge, do you have any recommendation for parents?
Oh, I have so many. And I actually thought about this before we met today, and I was thinking, let's just do like a list and then
Hmm.
you can share it with the podcast,
Yes.
because there's the National Museum of Australia. They have lots of video resources, which are great, particularly for anyone who doesn't like reading like myself.
Yeah, yeah.
So videos are great. Also the ABC, so the Australian Broadcasting something, they actually did heaps of kids videos.
Corporation.
Yeah, that's the one. They did heaps of kids videos around
Yes.
language, Dreamtime stories. There's also some stuff in there about identity and history. And so in terms of resources, videos are fantastic. And I would just put some links in here if we can. I'll give you some and you'll come up with some, and I'm sure we'll have a pretty good list by the end of it.
Absolutely. Right. Do you think it is important for a lot of parents to know about the stolen generation?
Yes, I really do. People say these are some fake stories that we hear when we come here to Australia, is that, it was so long ago. People should forget about it or get over it. Why can't Aboriginal people just move forward? Why are they so angry? So these are the fake stories that people might hear. And the reason why stolen generation is so important to understand is because that's where everything began. And if we know where things began, then we can understand why we are where we are right now. So stolen, for anyone that doesn't know, when Australia was colonised, they actually removed children from their parents, Aboriginal children. And that when they removed their children, they placed them with non-Aboriginal people under the Protection Act. So it was a piece of government legislation that was written to remove Aboriginal children from their own families and place them with non-Aboriginal people, and also to place them into missions, which were run by the churches, or to segregate them. So that was another word that was used at the time, basically pushing people out of towns. So there were often like town camps outside of towns where Aboriginal people would live. Or they would live in missions as an institution, a thing that was built to put people into. And these places were quite violent and they mistreated Aboriginal people, and not just people, they mistreated our children. They also murdered a lot of children. And the impacts of that. I know we're talking to parents here, but just imagine you get home from work one day and your child is gone, and you don't know where they are, and you can't call the police because the police are the ones that remove them. And if you call them, they might come and kill you. So it was a very, very violent past. And the impacts of that are intergenerational. So it goes from the first parent who had their child removed up until where we are today, which is only 7 to 10 generations after that happened. Is this still part of our story? So I could actually spend a whole day talking just about this one topic. And it's so important. I also know that colonization has done this to other countries where there has been a removal of children and placing them elsewhere, criminalising them as well. So part of the legislation the government wrote was to actually create children as criminals. So they had criminal records from the day they were born, not because they had done anything wrong, but because they were Aboriginal. And so I guess, yeah, there's lots and lots of intertangled, nasty things that happened. Yeah. If you want to know more, this is where we're going to give the resources, because there's some really good resources that go through this stuff. If you can't go to trainings, that's your other best bet.
Yes, thank you so much for sharing that with me and with us. It's a sad story, and yeah, I completely resonate with the story on as a parent coming back from work or coming back from your farm, wherever you've been to, and realizing that your child is gone. It's a tough one. It can be
Mm-hmm.
hard. What are the important things that my grandparents need to pass down to their children with regards to all history?
I think the main thing would be to know the true story. So don't believe the lies. The fake stories are very loud because we hear them from the TV. We see them on the news. Now we're in social media, so we see them on TikTok and Instagram and all of these other places. So if we get information, we need to start challenging that. Go, okay, well, where did that come from? Who wrote that? What lens are they looking through? Do they have any bias? Where can I get some true information? That would be a really important start, is, challenging truths and making sure they're actual truths and not just perceived truth or make believe, fake stories. So finding truth is something I would recommend. And then the other thing is staying curious without judgment. If we can be curious to other people's journeys without judging them for how they got where they are, then we can actually build empathy and connection. And those are the two things that make people really well when they're sick. So yeah, I think it would be like a whole bunch of stuff. But put simply, find the real stories. However you do that is up to you, whatever you feel comfortable with. And then, yeah, building empathy and not having judgment. Because at the end of the day, people are never problems. We were never born to be a problem. We were born because we were created, and then what happens next is part of the story, right? It's the beautiful thing about being alive. But the problems will come to us as part of our experience of the story. So people are never problems. Problems are problems. That's a big mantra that I have.
Powerful one for that. People ever problems, problems are problems, and being able to separate that will empower us to relate as humans, because we are all humans at the end of the day. And I feel the ability to make connection without being judgmental is very, very important. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing that. I believe that
Well,
every parent listening to this is, gleaning the wisdom that they require, that they need to, from what we're talking about, because this is what's happening today has the power to transform our tomorrow.
yes,
If we want to be a part of the change within the society, then we need to begin from our homes. We need to begin from our mindsets. We need to begin from living and filtering the things that we're hearing, the things that people say. And like you said, it's all about kind of stereotypical attitudes out there that have been put out just to paint some people in certain light. And we have to be the sane ones to say, no, I know better. I know. Knowing and acting on what we know to be the truth, I think is going to be very powerful in us. We want to make a difference in the world in a way that everybody feels belonged,
yes,
that sense of belonging. Because what is happening is that there's some kind of discrimination and segregation that separates people, and I think we are better when we have that sense of belonging, when we create that community where we feel accepted, where we feel
yes.
safe.
Oh, 100%. Couldn't agree more.
Yes. So, one thing I like to say is that there are practical ways that children have been exposed these days to Indigenous people's culture, Aboriginals, or the First Nations people, schools, and yes, within other community settings. So, like, there are beautiful things about. I've met some really beautiful Aboriginal people. I've met some really, really gorgeous. So, like, what are the beautiful things we should, on a lighter note, what are the beautiful things we should know about the Indigenous people? What are the cultural norms or lifestyle that we can glean from appreciate?
Yeah, good question. So I think if we go back to like the human collective, so all people on planet Earth at the very beginning of creation, everybody's ancestors sat around a fire, and they sat around a fire so that they could cook food and share stories and sing and dance and have ceremony. And I also know that because Australia was colonized so late in the game, so it's only been just over 240 years, our cultural practices are more closely aligned to everybody's ancestors. So if
Mm,
we just remember that we come from Mother Nature, we all have the experience of ceremony and dance and song and fire and connection and community. What we're actually doing when we connect to Aboriginal culture is we're remembering who we are, even if we've forgotten. Remember the thing called epigenetics that I said at the start of the podcast, is that our bodies remember the sensation of ceremony. So joining and sharing with Aboriginal people, learning language, learning culture with them, understanding the importance of smoking ceremonies and welcome to countries, acknowledgement of countries, all of these things accumulate to reconnecting to your own identity as a human on planet Earth. I think it's really powerful that we can tap into our own ancestors while we're also reconnecting to the oldest living culture on planet Earth.
sorry?
Just basically, when we're learning culture with Aboriginal people, we're reconnecting to our own ancestors because it's the oldest living culture. So just because our cultures may have been deconstructed by colonization when we come to Australia, doesn't mean we don't have it, and doesn't mean our bodies don't remember the feeling of connection and ceremony, song, dance, language, those sorts of things. So it just makes
Absolutely.
us well. It'll make us happier and healthier.
Yes. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I think it's really beautiful witnessing the smoking ceremonies, the dances, the music, connection to nature. I think it's really beautiful. And Australia is so beautiful. The land, the sea, it's so beautiful.
Mm. And it
We're all
is because,
blessed.
Aboriginal people looked after the country before colonizers came. And then even when they got here and they were trying to remove Aboriginal people, and they called us fauna and flora, so plants and animals. They called us plants and animals because they wanted to destroy us as people. But regardless of all of that, they still protested. We still spoke up. We still told the truth to make sure that sacred sites, our ancestral sacred sites, our church of the bush, you could call it. So, a lot of religions build buildings to worship. Australia, we have environment built to worship. So our trees, our rocks, our landscapes, our waterways, those are all our worshipping spaces. So to remove them means you're destroying our church, our religion. So yeah, we're very lucky that we've had so much protest and resistance so that we can keep Australia so beautiful. So when people migrate here, they can also share how beautiful our landscapes are.
Thank you so much for being so welcoming. Thank you for accepting those of us who came willingly, who came to be, experience the beauty on the land. I must say, you are welcoming.
Yeah, I mean, that's another fake story is that Aboriginal people hate everyone. We're the most loving, forgiving, kind culture because we actually like we share everything. So
Yes.
I don't see where the fake story comes from apart from trying to disconnect people, which is what colonization's tactics are. But really, if you ever ask an Aboriginal person for help and they can help you, they will help you. And we do love people coming to Australia. We love that we have multiculturalism here. We value the power of culture from other places and the stories that people tell us because those stories can also help us get strong in resistance, in fighting back, in making better choices to do with healing and well-being. So in terms of knowledge, the more the better.
Yes, absolutely.
Use the knowledge of success from all over the world, then we can change our story really quick.
Absolutely. Talking about changing our story. Um, Tell us more about the part you're playing.
So there's a few things. So I think one thing would be my existence changes a lot of people's stories. So as soon as I wake up and I check my phone like everyone else does, I might get some messages, I might reply. So I've already touched people before I've left my bedroom. And then I might go to the shop. I might smile at a stranger. That stranger could be at a point in their story where that is their darkest day. And that one smile could have saved their life. So the small moves that we all make change stories every day. You don't have to be qualified at anything to help someone feel good. We just have to smile or wave or um, have a kind ear. Just listen without judgment. So I think the power of us as an individual is very strong. And the fake story again. So we'll talk about fake stories. The fake story is that Tamara is a narrative therapist, so therefore she knows how to help everyone. That's not true. The true story is that we can all help each other. We don't need qualifications to get better. We also have resources like the internet. So if we don't know, we can Google something, or we can find other people that have that experience of surviving that problem. So that's the other thing, is that lived experience of overcoming the battle and the knowledge that someone has when they've won that battle. You cannot get that at a university. You cannot get that at a TAFE course. You cannot get that from an educational institution of any kind. It comes from the human. It comes from the person who found the pathways of survival from that problem that came to them. So I don't say I do much at all. I just do what I know we can all do. And I teach other people to remember that they can do these things.
It's mind blowing, honestly. Say that everyone can remember to smile, remember to be kind, remember to, create a safe space for everyone, remember not to be judgmental, remember not to discriminate, remember. Please don't forget.
Yeah.
Powerful. Thank you for sharing. On a more detailed level, um, on what platform, on what pedestal does the work you do enhance the outlook of the Indigenous people, and what does the future hold?
Ooh, I love future questions. So the good thing is that lots of people have done lots of work before I came along. So I don't have to work very hard, which is great.
Yeah.
There's lots of tools that people are using to get better, to fight intergenerational trauma through strength-based storytelling. And that's what the narrative therapy is. So that came from community members in collaboration with education. Narrative therapy has been around for over 20 years. I think it's almost 30 years now. In terms of a tool for well-being, it's probably the best practice tool for Indigenous people. So not just Aboriginal people, but all people from any cultural background. A lot of the concepts were, I guess, created from shared lived experiences of other people's stories. So part of the tools that we use is the Tree of Life. And that tool was designed in Africa for children recovering or living with HIV or AIDS. And so it was about removing that part of their identity and letting them grow stronger in who they actually are. They're not just a diagnosis. They're loved, they're wanted, they're leaders, they're community members, they've got skills and abilities, they've got hopes and dreams. So they're actually more than just a diagnosis. So the tools and things have been around a long time. The impacts can be huge. I learned narrative therapy from Nunkamaranyunti, which is an Aboriginal training institution. Accredited training is delivered through there, and that training was delivered by Aboriginal people. So Aboriginal content, Aboriginal trainers, Aboriginal training organisation, and then out popped me and a whole bunch of other people. There's over 200 qualified narrative therapists because of them. And then I went back into the system, burnt out, and then I popped out with Wonky Lines. And Wonky Lines is serviced. I haven't actually calculated, but I'm sure that I've done work with over 200 people on a one-on-one basis. But also collectively, I do forums and workshops with hundreds of people at a time. So I've probably spoken to more than 10,000 people in 4 years since I've started. And those people, so you light the torch and then the fire spreads. So if I talk to one person, or I talk to a group of people. As you know, you went to a little workshop with me, Aya. So
Yes,
you come to a workshop, I touch one person, here you are, you invite me to a podcast, you then put that podcast out, then it touches,
ripple
100, 200,
effects.
500, and then two of those people might share that news. And then eventually we've got intergenerational healing because they're learning the lessons that they need to hear from someone they trust, someone they believe, someone they know. The true story is coming. It's not from a mainstream news outlet or a politician trying to get more funding, or it's just coming from a heart space. So
Yeah,
the implications of sharing stories from hearts and through kindness and through non-judgment is huge impact. I don't know if I answered the question, but I always
absolutely.
say you light the fire and it will just burn. So you start and it will just on go. I can't calculate what that impact is and I don't really care about it. I just keep doing it.
Yes, just takes one person to light a candle and be the candle that lights others. Yeah, that influence spreads in a very beautiful way. I think you're
Mm.
doing a fabulous job. I really admire what you're doing, and I know that indeed it's bringing healing. It's paving a new pathway for a generation that is going to emerge and really be whole in themselves because um, it is possible to live beyond trauma. Understand what I mean?
Yeah,
It's
yep,
possible
yep,
to,
yep.
yes, yes. So do you want to speak on that? Like it's possible to heal. It's possible to live beyond trauma. It's possible to experience the wholeness of life.
Yeah. Well, actually, like trauma stories are amazing because they give us so much richness and so much value. And I think if we channel our stories in a way that is strength based, if we rewrite the story with all of the things that we've learned that will evolve us into the next version of ourselves, we're unstoppable. I personally have gone through many stories of trauma, but I have a job, I have a business, I have a beautiful family, I have amazingly barking, annoying dogs. They love me. I have beautiful friend networks. I have so many opportunities coming my way. I woke up today, the sun is shining. So trauma doesn't define me. And I think we get wrapped up in this whole idea of like, someone's traumatized, we can't help them, or, they have all these problems. They're anxious, they're depressed, they're alcoholics, they're violent, whatever they are. But that's just putting someone in the mix with the problems. That's why I say people are not problems, problems are problems. No one was born to become an alcoholic. They were born, something happened, they use alcohol to cope. So it's a
True.
coping strategy, it's a survival mechanism. If
Yes.
someone can identify what that is that they're doing, they can then make a choice. Do I want that in my life? And so it's a separate thing. It's easier to get rid of. But yeah, post-traumatic growth is real. Trauma is natural. We're meant to be traumatized at some points in our life. It's part of the human experience. When we lose a loved one, for example, when they pass, that is traumatizing. So we're actually meant to experience trauma. The thing we're not meant to do is to keep forcing ourselves to suffer inside of it. So we experience it, we acknowledge it, we learn from it, we make choices on how we manage it without bringing in bigger problems like alcohol, gambling, whatever, whatever. And then once we've done that, then we can go, right, now I feel like I'm healed from this. And then you might not be, you might get triggered again and go back to the cycle. But it's okay. You will learn more from a traumatic event than you will from 3 years at university about
Mm-hmm.
yourself, about others, about what works, what doesn't work. It's so powerful. If I was not so traumatized, I would not be a very good therapist.
Absolute wisdom. Thank you so
I
much for
know, it's
sharing. I have
always
to.
so much. Sorry.
No, really. I have to go. I have to listen to everything you've said again and let it assimilate because you've touched like important parts of this discussion, and I feel if I can sit in it and marinate everything, it's life changing. It's transforming. It's that
Mm,
powerful.
it is.
Thank you so much. So, what are your final words? Yeah, what will be your final words to my parents and everybody? This information can reach anyone.
So, I would just say, stay curious to other people's stories. We only meet people for a short moment. Sometimes we choose them and they stick around for a long time. Sometimes we choose them and they stick around for a little bit of a time. But every minute that they've experienced before we've met them, we were never there. We don't know. And
Yes.
so we cannot make assumptions on why someone is how they are. We need to just stay curious and ask, including Aboriginal people. I mean, making assumptions based on what you see on the news, that's completely crazy. I would never believe the news. I would much rather go and interview someone like what you're doing here today. So having a chat, finding out the story, different perspectives, different angles, and everyone's truth is different. There's over 7 billion people on planet Earth. Not any two of those has had the same life. Every single human being on planet Earth has had their own journey from the day they took their first breath to the day they take their last. They are the only one that will ever know what that felt like. And so the power in that is that if they have lived through traumatic events and they have survived through traumatic events, which they do because it's a human experience, but that story of survival is so powerful in helping others and making the world a much more beautiful place. So that's sort of where I come from for that. My hopes and dreams for the future is I know that colonization is a big beast to tackle. That's why I always focus on what we can do. And if it's just a little smile on the street, if your goal for the day is 3 smiles, I like setting goals. My challenge that I've set for myself between now and the new year is to not complain about the weather because I need to be more grateful and more thankful about my experiences that I'm having as part of my story, because there are some people that have that taken before they choose to go. And so honoring people that don't have the opportunities that I have to be here tomorrow, I will try not to complain about the weather as much.
Absolute. Wisdom. Wisdom. We stay curious, we stay open to learning, and we choose to live our lives kind. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes,
I'm so
absolutely.
grateful for everything you've shared. Yes, where can people find you? Are you on social media? How can people who want to reach out to you, counseling, how can they reach out to you?
Yeah, so I have a website, wonkylinescounselling.com.au. I also have TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, all the goodies, and LinkedIn. But in terms of using it, I'm not always on there. They're busy platforms, they're unreliable. So sometimes it's good to just sign up for the email list. So I've got that going on the website now. So anyone that wants to sign up there, they can. And then I'll be sending out information monthly about different concepts. So we'll be talking about what narrative therapy is, how to externalize problem stories from who we are, what is intergenerational trauma. So I actually do a lot of that fact-based stuff through there as well, because I can't help everyone all the time. So I try and just provide as much as I can, the smiley bits of information.
Yeah.
And then the rest is up to planet Earth and the people that live here. I think if we come from a place of the heart, we will do better. The heart's a pretty powerful thing. If anyone's interested, do some research on heart energy. It actually leaves our bodies and it interacts with other people's hearts. And it's a beautiful idea. It's a beautiful truth. And it's something that a lot of people know and feel, but the science is just catching up to what we know and feel.
I'm so hopeful about the future. I'm pumped up that together it's going to be a beautiful world for every one of us and a better world. In
It will
summary,
be.
thank you so much for your time. And now we've come to the end of this podcast. I hope that you have been able to write down a couple of things that you would implement in your own life, the things that you would begin to change. I hope you're able to, see something that resonates with you as said on this podcast. And now I would ask that not yet subscribed, please subscribe. I would see you again another time. Stay hopeful. Bye.
Thank you. See you.
Thank you so much, Tamara.
Thanks, I.
Yeah. Bye. Thank you so much.